I was once the husband who believed in love stories. Sarah and I had celebrated 8 anniversaries at Bellamy's, the place where I proposed with red roses. Our marriage had grown strained lately with her late nights at work, but I still loved her deeply. When I accidentally discovered she was having an important business dinner at our special restaurant, I decided to surprise her with flowers. I thought it might remind her of our happier days. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. If you've ever been blindsided in a relationship, give this video a like and subscribe to join our community where we share real-life experiences. Sarah and I met at an art exhibition downtown. I was there supporting a friend whose photography was being featured, and she was accompanying a client. Our eyes met across the room while examining a particularly striking black and white portrait. I smiled, she smiled back, and somehow we ended up talking for 3 hours long after her client and my friend had left. Our first date was at a small jazz club with brick walls and dim lighting. I remember being nervous, checking my watch every few minutes before she arrived. When she walked in wearing a blue dress that matched her eyes, I knew I was in trouble. Good trouble. The kind that makes your heart beat faster. We clicked instantly. Our relationship progressed naturally through weekend beach trips where we collected seashells, hiking excursions, where she always packed extra protein bars because she knew I would forget mine, and quiet evenings making dinner together in my tiny apartment kitchen. I proposed at Bellamy's, an upscale restaurant with warm lighting and intimate tables. I had arranged with the staff to serve the ring with dessert. When she said yes, the entire restaurant applauded. We got married the following spring in a simple ceremony at her parents' backyard with just 50 guests. It was perfect. Every year on our anniversary, we returned to Bellamy's. The staff knew us by name and always reserved our special corner table. It became our tradition, our sacred space. Even when money was tight, we saved for that annual celebration. Things began to change 3 years ago, when Sarah received a major promotion at her marketing firm. She had always been ambitious, and I was genuinely happy for her success. The company recognized her talent, and she quickly became indispensable to their biggest accounts. The promotion came with longer hours and increased responsibilities. At first, she would call if she was going to be late, apologizing and promising to make it up to me. Gradually, the calls stopped, replaced by brief texts that sometimes didn't arrive until she was already walking through our front door at 10 or 11 at night. I tried to be supportive. I took over more household responsibilities, prepared meals that could be easily reheated, and limited my complaints about her absence. I wanted to be the husband who stood by his successful wife, not the insecure man who felt threatened by her career. Her brother James never approved of me. He was a corporate lawyer, with an Ivy League education and designer suits. During family gatherings, he would ask pointed questions about my job as a graphic designer at a mid-size marketing agency, emphasizing that I had chosen stability over advancement when I declined a management position to maintain my graphic designer. Work-life balance. Some people lack ambition, he once said at Thanksgiving dinner, looking directly at me. They're content to coast through life, while others drive forward. Sarah used to defend me. Martin has different priorities, she would say. Not everyone measures success by their title or salary. But in recent months, her defenses had grown weaker, sometimes even absent. Our arguments increased, usually about money or time. She wanted to renovate our kitchen with high-end appliances, while I suggested more modest upgrades that wouldn't strain our budget. She canceled our weekend plans with increasing frequency, citing work emergencies that somehow always coincided with activities she had shown little enthusiasm for. I tried to salvage our relationship with small gestures. One Friday, I prepared her favorite meal, salmon with roasted vegetables, and that lemon sauce she loved, set the dining room table with candles and our wedding china. I texted her that I had a surprise waiting. 20 minutes before dinner, she replied that she had to attend an impromptu client meeting and would grab something on the way home. She arrived after 11, barely acknowledging the cold dinner still sitting on the table. The following month, Sarah mentioned a weekend conference in Chicago. By chance, I ran into her coworker Lisa at the grocery store that same weekend. When I asked about the conference, Lisa looked confused. "What conference? We don't have anything scheduled in Chicago." When Sarah returned Sunday night, I asked how the sessions went. She launched into a detailed account of speakers and networking events. I listened, my stomach nodding with each fabricated detail. When I mentioned running into Lisa, Sarah's expression shifted almost imperceptibly before she explained that the conference was only for senior management. I suggested we should talk more about our relationship, about the distance growing between us. "You're being oversensitive," she said, scrolling through emails on her phone. "This is just a busy period. It will calm down soon." But it never did. The first suspicious text appeared on a Tuesday morning. Sarah was in the shower and her phone buzzed repeatedly on the nightstand. I glanced over, not intending to snoop, but the preview caught my eye. "Miss you already. Lunch, same place tomorrow, Greg." I knew her colleagues had met most of them at company events. Greg was her new direct supervisor, recently transferred from the West Coast office. Tall, confident, with perfect teeth, and a watch that probably cost more than my car. When I asked about him casually over dinner, Sarah mentioned he was married with 2 kids in California, commuting back on weekends. 2 weeks later, while doing laundry, I found a hotel receipt in her pants pocket. The Westlake downtown, just 3 miles from our house. When I asked about it, she said it was for a client who needed last-minute accommodations. The explanation seemed reasonable, but something in her voice sounded rehearsed. I began noticing other changes. Sarah started working out more intensely, bought new clothes, and wore perfume I didn't recognize. She became protective of her phone, always keeping it face down or in her pocket. If I entered a room while she was texting, she would quickly switch apps or put the phone away entirely. Sometimes, she would return home smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't mine. When I hugged her, she would stiffen slightly before forcing herself to relax into my embrace. Our physical intimacy had decreased dramatically with Sarah, always too tired or preoccupied with work concerns. One evening, I tried to address my concerns directly. We were sitting on the couch after dinner, a rare moment when she wasn't working or distracted by her phone. "Sarah, I feel like we're drifting apart," I said. "Is everything okay between us? You seem distant lately." Her response was immediate and defensive. "What are you implying? That I'm cheating on you or something?" She stood up, anger flashing in her eyes. "I'm killing myself at work, and instead of supporting me, you're throwing around accusations." "I didn't accuse you of anything," I said, surprised by her reaction. "I'm just worried about our relationship." "This is exactly why I can't talk to you anymore," she snapped. "You turn everything into some emotional crisis. Maybe if you focused more on your career, instead of analyzing our marriage, you'd understand the pressure I'm under." "I declined that promotion because we agreed one of us should maintain flexibility for when we start a family," I reminded her. "Well, that was then," she said dismissively. "I can't keep having my growth limited by your lack of ambition. Sometimes I feel like you're holding me back." Her words stung more than she could know. I had always supported her career, rearranged my life to accommodate her schedule, celebrated her successes as our shared victories. Now she was framing my choices as limitations, my stability as stagnation. The conversation ended with Sarah grabbing her laptop and retreating to the guest bedroom, claiming she needed to prepare for an early meeting. I sat alone in the living room, wondering when our partnership had become a competition. A few days later, I overheard Sarah on the phone in our home office. The door was partially open, and her voice carried down the hallway. "Yes, it's all arranged. The dinner is at Bellamy's next Thursday at 7. The entire team will be there, plus regional directors." She paused, listening. "No, he has no idea. He thinks I'm having dinner with clients from Toronto." Another pause. "I know, but this is important for us. Everything needs to be perfect." My heart sank. Bellamy's was our special place. We had reservations for our anniversary the following month, but apparently it was now just another venue for her business functions. What hurt more was the deception. She could have simply told me about the dinner. Why lie? A plan formed in my mind. I would surprise her at Bellamy's, not to confront or embarrass her, but to reconnect. Perhaps seeing me in the place where we shared so many happy memories would remind her of what we once had. I would bring red roses, just like our first date. That evening, I casually asked about her schedule for the coming week. "Anything important happening?" I asked, as we cleared the dinner dishes. "Just the usual meetings," she said without looking up. "Oh, and Thursday I have dinner with those Canadian clients I mentioned." At Bellamy's, I asked, keeping my tone neutral. She froze momentarily before shaking her head. "No, at the Capitol Grill downtown. The clients requested it." Another lie. My chest tightened, but I smiled and nodded. "Sounds nice. Hope it goes well." On Thursday, I left work early and stopped by the florist to pick up a dozen red roses. I wore the navy blue suit Sarah had always said looked good on me, and the tie she had given me last Christmas. I wanted to look my best to remind her of the man she fell in love with. I arrived at Bellamy's 15 minutes before 7, my heart pounding as I parked across the street. Through the large windows, I could see the restaurant was busier than usual, with a large group occupying the main section. I took a deep breath, checked my appearance in the rearview mirror, and grabbed the roses from the passenger seat. As I approached the entrance, Marcus the maitre d', who had known us for years, recognized me immediately. "Mr. Martin, what a pleasant surprise. We weren't expecting you tonight." He glanced at his reservation book. "Your usual table is reserved for next month's anniversary dinner." "I know," I said with a smile. "I'm actually here to surprise my wife. She's having a business dinner tonight." Marcus nodded in understanding. "Ah yes, Mrs. Williams is here with a large party. They're in our main dining section. Would you like me to escort you?" "No thanks, I'll find my way. I want to surprise her." As I walked through the familiar space, memories flooded back. The corner where we celebrated her promotion 4 years ago. The table by the window where we sat discussing our future home. The bar where we waited during a thunderstorm when the power went out and the staff served champagne to everyone by candlelight. The business dinner was larger than I expected. At least 20 people seated around several tables pushed together. Sarah sat at the center wearing a stunning red dress I had never seen before. She looked radiant, her hair styled differently. Laughing at something the man beside her said. That man was Greg, her supervisor, sitting inappropriately close. I hesitated, suddenly questioning my decision. Maybe this was a mistake. But before I could retreat, Sarah stood up and tapped her glass with a spoon. The room quieted as all eyes turned to her. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she began, her voice confident and clear. "This dinner celebrates not only our company's biggest acquisition to date, but also represents a personal milestone for me." She smiled broadly, looking around the table. "I'm also celebrating my divorce from my loser husband today. After 8 years of being held back, I'm finally free to pursue the life and career I deserve." The room erupted in applause and congratulatory shouts. Someone whistled. I stood frozen, the roses hanging limply at my side, my mind struggling to process her words. Divorce. When had we discussed divorce? We hadn't even separated. Just that morning she had kissed me goodbye and reminded me to pick up dry cleaning. My feet moved of their own accord, carrying me forward toward the table. The crowd quieted as people noticed me approaching. Sarah's eyes widened in shock when she saw me. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady, despite the earthquake happening inside me. Before Sarah could respond, a strong hand gripped my shoulder. I turned to see James, her brother, his face twisted with contempt. "Sit down and stop embarrassing her," he hissed in my ear, his fingers digging painfully into my shoulder. "You've done enough damage." "James, let go of me," I said firmly, trying to maintain my dignity, despite the public spectacle we were creating. Instead of releasing me, he shoved me hard. I stumbled backward, colliding with a waiter who was carrying several plates of flambéed dishes. The impact sent the waiter off balance, and the flaming food splashed across my jacket and shirt. In an instant, my clothes caught fire. Panic erupted. Someone screamed. I frantically tried to extinguish the flames slapping at my burning clothes. In the chaos, I lost my footing and fell, hitting my head against the sharp edge of a nearby table. Pain exploded through my skull, and darkness swallowed my consciousness. I'm not sure how long I was out. It could have been seconds or minutes. When I regained awareness, I was lying on the floor, my shirt soaked with water someone had poured to extinguish the flames. My skin burned where the fire had touched, and my head throbbed with each heartbeat. Slowly, I pushed myself up to a sitting position, noticing the strange silence that had fallen over the room. Everyone was staring at something behind me, their expressions, a mix of shock and discomfort. I turned painfully to see what had captured their attention. Greg was down on one knee in front of Sarah, holding open a small velvet box with a diamond ring that caught the light from the overhead chandelier. "I know you're still technically married," he was saying, "but I couldn't wait any longer." "Sarah, will you marry me once your divorce is finalized?" The pieces suddenly fit together in my mind with brutal clarity. There was no divorce in progress. Sarah had been planning to leave me for. Greg had apparently told everyone we were already separating, but had never actually informed me the husband she was discarding. Sarah stared at me, her face flushing with embarrassment and anger, as if I had deliberately ruined her moment rather than discovering my own public humiliation. In her eyes I saw not the woman who had once loved me but a stranger who viewed me as an inconvenient obstacle to her happiness. With my head still spinning and skin stinging from burns, I struggled to my feet. The restaurant remained eerily silent, all eyes darting between Sarah Gregg and me. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The shock and pain transformed into a clarity I hadn't felt in months. "Let me help you with this situation," I said, my voice carrying across the silent room as I pulled out my phone and activated the video recording. I turned slowly, capturing the scene. Greg still kneeling with the ring, Sarah's frozen expression, James's threatening posture, and the scattered remains of the flaming dishes. "Sarah," I said, looking directly at her, "you never mentioned wanting a divorce. We live in the same house. We share a bed. This morning you kissed me goodbye and asked me to pick up your dry cleaning." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Greg's confident expression faltered as he stood up, closing the ring box. "What are you talking about?" he asked, looking at Sarah. "You said you filed for divorce 3 months ago, and were just waiting for it to be finalized." Sarah's face paled. "Martin, this isn't the place to discuss our private matters," she hissed. "I agree," I replied calmly. It wasn't the place to announce our supposed divorce either, yet here we are. Her colleagues began exchanging uncomfortable glances. The story they had been told was unraveling before their eyes. A woman near the end of the table, who I recognized as the head of human resources, was watching with particular interest. James stepped forward again, his face flushed with anger. "You need to leave right now," he growled. Marcus, the maitre d' appeared at my side. "Sir, I must ask that you not threaten our guests," he said firmly to James. "Mr. Martin, are you injured? We've called paramedics to check your burns." "I'm okay enough to stand," I said, though. My skin was blistering painfully under my water-soaked shirt. I turned back to the table of silent observers. "I apologize for interrupting your celebration. I came here tonight because Bellamy's is where I proposed to Sarah 8 years ago. It's where we've celebrated every anniversary since. When I heard she was having a business dinner here, I thought I'd surprise her with flowers." I gestured to the crushed roses, now scattered on the floor. "I didn't know I was coming to hear the announcement of a divorce I wasn't aware was happening." I looked directly at Sarah. "I don't know what you've told your colleagues, but we have not discussed separation. We have not filed paperwork, and until about 5 minutes ago, I thought we were working through a rough patch." Greg looked stricken. "Sarah, is this true? Are you still legally married with no divorce in process?" Sarah's silence was confirmation enough. The HR director stood up and quietly said something to another executive. I placed my wallet on the table. "Please add any damages from this incident to our tab. I'll also be covering everyone's meals tonight as an apology for the disruption." I removed my credit card and handed it to Marcus. "That won't be necessary, sir," Marcus said quietly. "The company reservation includes all charges. Then please bill me separately for the damages to your property and any medical expenses," I insisted. I turned back to Sarah one last time. "The roses are for our anniversary, which would have been next month. I guess we won't be needing our reservation anymore." I placed the single, unharmed rose that remained in my hand on the table before her. "Congratulations on your engagement, Sarah. I hope you had planned to tell me about our divorce at some point." With as much dignity as I could muster in burnt clothes and with a bleeding head, I walked out of Bellamy's. Behind me, I could hear the commotion resume, voices rising in confused discussion. Outside paramedics were arriving, but I waved them toward the restaurant and walked to my car. Only when I was alone did I allow the tears to come hot and bitter as the full reality of my situation crashed down upon me. The next morning I contacted a lawyer. With evidence of Sarah's infidelity and the public scene at Bellamy's, which several witnesses had recorded and shared with me privately, our divorce proceedings moved swiftly. The court looked unfavorably on Sarah's deception, especially her attempt to claim we had already separated when financial records clearly showed otherwise. Her company had their own concerns. Their policy strictly prohibited relationships between managers and direct reports. Greg was transferred to another department, and Sarah's professional reputation suffered as colleagues questioned her integrity. James attempted to confront me outside the courthouse after our first hearing, but security intervened before he could cause a scene. "You ruined her life," he shouted as guards led him away. "No," I responded calmly. "She did that herself when she decided lies were easier than truth." The initial weeks after Bellamy's were the hardest. I moved out of our house into a small apartment across town, needing space away from the memories. Sleep eluded me for days at a time as my mind replayed her words over and over, my loser husband. 8 years together dismissed so cruelly and publicly. My lawyer, Angela, was thorough and compassionate. She helped me document the financial discrepancies we discovered, including a secret account Sarah had been funneling money into for months, presumably preparing for her new life with Greg. The burns on my chest and arm healed slowly, leaving scars that served as physical reminders of that night. I threw myself into work during the day, but evenings stretched endlessly before me in the empty apartment. Sometimes I would sit for hours staring at our wedding photo, trying to reconcile that smiling woman with the person who could humiliate me so thoroughly. Had she ever loved me? Or had I been a convenient stepping stone in her career path? The turning point came about a month after the incident. A colleague mentioned a support group for people going through divorce. Initially reluctant, I finally attended a meeting held in a community center downtown. Listening to others share similar stories of betrayal and rebuilding helped me realize I wasn't alone in my experience. Michael, a member of the group who had been divorced for 2 years, invited me for coffee after the meeting. The best revenge, he told me, is not revenge at all. It's creating a life so good that when they look back, they realize what they threw away. His words resonated with me. I began reconnecting with friends I had neglected during my marriage's difficult final months. My college roommate Thomas invited me on a weekend camping trip that forced me out of my apartment and back into nature. Sitting by a campfire under stars, I laughed for the first time in weeks. I rediscovered my passion for playing guitar, something Sarah had always considered a waste of time. I joined a climbing gym and challenged myself physically, the endorphins helping to lift my depression. Every small accomplishment, from mastering a difficult song to conquering a challenging climbing route, rebuilt my confidence bit by tiny bit. When a volunteer opportunity arose at the local community center teaching graphic design to teenagers, I signed up. Helping young people discover their creative talents gave me purpose beyond my own problems. Their enthusiasm and gratitude were healing in ways I hadn't anticipated. The divorce proceedings concluded faster than expected. Sarah's lawyers advised her to settle, rather than fight, once they saw the evidence against her. In the end, I kept my retirement accounts and personal property while she retained the house with a requirement to buy out my equity share. During our final mediation session, Sarah asked to speak with me privately. We sat in a small conference room, the first time we had been alone together since that night at Bellamy's. "I never meant for things to happen this way," she said, unable to meet my eyes. "Greg and I, it just happened. I thought it would be easier to start fresh without dragging out a messy separation." "So you decided not to include me in the decision about my own marriage?" I asked. "You planned to ambush me with divorce papers after publicly humiliating me." "I was going to tell you," she insisted. "I just hadn't found the right moment." "The right moment was before you started seeing Greg. The right moment was before you told your entire company we were divorcing. The right moment was before you accepted another man's proposal." She had no response to that. "I loved you, Sarah," I said softly. "I would have done anything to make our marriage work, even if that meant eventually accepting it was over. But you never gave us that chance. You never gave me the basic respect of honesty." "I'm sorry," she whispered, a tear sliding down her cheek. "For whatever it's worth, I really am sorry." "I believe you," I replied. "But it doesn't change anything now." As I rose to leave, she asked, "Will you ever forgive me?" I paused at the door. "I already have. Not for your sake, but for mine. Carrying anger would only give you power over my future, and you've had enough influence over my life already." 6 months after that night at Bellamy's, I received the promotion I had previously declined. With no family obligations holding me back, I accepted the increased responsibility and salary. The additional income allowed me to purchase a small house with a backyard where I planted a garden, something I had always wanted but Sarah had dismissed as too much maintenance. Through a mutual friend, I met Allison, an elementary school art teacher with an infectious laugh and honest eyes. Our relationship developed, slowly built on open communication and mutual respect. When I finally shared the full story of my marriage's end, she held my hand and said, "Thank you for trusting me with your pain." Her simple acknowledgement of my experience was profoundly healing. 1 year to the day after the Bellamy's incident, I made a reservation at the restaurant, not to wallow in painful memories, but to reclaim the space. I brought Thomas, Michael, and 2 other close friends. We sat at a different table, ordered excellent food, and celebrated friendship and new beginnings. Marcus, the maitre d' welcomed me warmly and refused to accept payment for our desserts. To resilience, Thomas toasted, raising his glass. And to second chances. I've learned that relationships require more than love. They require honesty, respect, and the courage to face difficult truths together. I've learned that self-worth isn't determined by someone else's opinion, and that dignity in crisis reveals more about character than success in easy times. Most importantly, I've learned that while we cannot control how others treat us, we can control how we respond to betrayal. We can choose bitterness or growth, revenge or rebuilding. The scars remain both physical and emotional, but they've become part of my story rather than defining it. If you've ever faced betrayal or public humiliation, know that it doesn't have to be the end of your story. It can be the beginning of a better chapter. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after a relationship ended unexpectedly? Share your experience in the comments. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience. And if you know someone struggling with betrayal, share this video as a reminder that healing is possible even from our deepest wounds. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes the path forward becomes visible only after everything falls apart.